Now, I got a message. So hang on just a second. Okay. Before I get started, I'm going to do some stuff that Pastor Larry would be doing, but he's not here today, okay? So we have an announcement that's extremely important. YSC Wednesday will now be at 4 o'clock instead of 3. You can come at 3, but it's best to come at 4 o'clock. Okay, Pastor Larry has his message notes, and there's some very important stuff in this reading. In Genesis chapter 48, you see this. You read the story of Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, being adopted by Jacob. Read that. It's really important. By adopting them, he adopted them as though they were his own children, and the text says that. They each get firstborn's blessings. You will also notice that when he did the blessing, that he reversed his hands and gave the right hand blessing to Ephraim, and the left hand blessing to Manasseh. This is good stuff. Okay, I'm gonna cut that there and move on to this message. I'm gonna need all of the time, I think. So, you ready? Yeshua teaches Torah. It's a message series that I started a couple weeks back, and it will continue for a long time. I was kind of thinking I'd end it by Passover, but that's probably not what's going to happen. Okay, Yeshua teaches us about man-made traditions is the message today. Yahweh, open our eyes that we might see wonders from your word. Now, the reason for this particular message series is that on 12/26/19 at 1:10 a.m. in the morning, Yahweh gave me a word. That word was Immanuel, which means El is with us. What would El do, what would God do if he was with us? Well, one thing he would do is to teach us his ways. Yahweh sent Yeshua to be El with us, Immanuel, so that Yeshua could teach us his ways, Torah. And we see that in the Isaiah 7:14. Therefore, Yahweh himself gives you a sign. Look, the virgin conceives and gives birth to a son, and shall call his name Immanuel. And in John 1:14, it says, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Now, here is our message. Yeshua teaches us about man-made traditions. This kind of got spurred from something happened on Facebook here last week. Does Yeshua cancel the Levitical food laws? But the church says he did. I'm going to go to Mark chapter 7. Now, I've been dealing with Matthew, but I've got the whole time today. I've got about 45 minutes today. And this is a long message. This actually comes out of a paper I wrote quite a few years ago for Yeshiva. I'm going to read. Normally I'd just tell you, go ahead and read it, but then I'd be sitting here watching you read, which is kind of dumb. So I'm going to read Mark chapter 7, verses 1 through 23, and I'm going to read it from the King James. Then came together unto him the Pharisees, and certain of the scribes, which came from Jerusalem. And when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is to say, with unwashen hands, they found fault. Verse 3. For the Pharisees and all the Jews, except they wash their hands oft, eat not, holding the traditions of the elders. And when they came from the market, except they wash, they eat not. And many other things there be, which they have received to hold, as the washing of cups and pots, brazen vessels, and of tables. Verse 5. Then the Pharisees and the scribes asked him, Why walk not thy disciples according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashen hands? He answered and said to them, Well hath Esaias prophesied of you hypocrites, as it is written, This people honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Howbeit, in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. For laying aside the commandment of Yahweh, ye hold the tradition of men, as the washing of pots and cups, and many other such like things ye do. And he said unto them, Full well ye reject the commandment of Yahweh. By the way, I corrected the sacred names. The commandment of Yahweh, that ye may keep your own tradition. For Moses said, Honor thy father and thy mother, and whosoever curseth father or mother, let him die the death. But ye say, If a man shall say to his father or mother, It is korban, that is to say, a gift, by whatsoever thou mightest be profited by me, he shall be free. Verse 12. And ye suffer him no more to do aught for his father or his mother, making the word of Yahweh of none effect through your tradition, which ye have delivered, and many such things ye do. And when he had called all the people unto him, he said unto them, Hearken unto me, every one of you, and understand. There is nothing from without a man that entereth into him can defile him. But the things which come out of him, those are they that defile the man. Verse 16. If any man have ears to hear, let him hear. And when he had entered into the house from the people, his disciples asked him concerning the parable. And he said unto them, Are ye without understanding also? Do ye not perceive that whatsoever thing from without entereth into the man, it cannot defile him? Verse 19. Because it entereth not into his heart, but into the belly, and goeth out into the draught, purging all meats. And he said, That which cometh out of the man, that defileth the man. For from within, out of the heart of men, proceeds evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, and foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile the man. That's the King James Version of Mark chapter 7, verse 1 through 23. And I corrected the sacred names because that's the way I like to do things. And if you have another version, you go ahead and read that. So let's start this thing. The Pharisees from Jerusalem visit Yeshua. Now, if you go back to Mark 6:53, you see that Yeshua, his Talmudim, his disciples, and all those people are up in the town or the area Gennesaret, which is in the Galilee. Okay, here's what it is. This is the Galilee area. Now, he spent a lot of his ministry there. There's a whole bunch of towns around there, and he went to these towns and he did a lot of stuff, and this is what the recordings are, or the text that we have. This is where Yeshua and his disciples are, Gennesaret. It's a considerable distance from Jerusalem. This is a map of the area from Jerusalem up to Galilee. It shows you the highways and roads from Jerusalem to Galilee. Now, they had highways then. They had a major highway that went up there called the King's Highway. The Pharisees that visited Yeshua traveled from here, which is Jerusalem, way up to here. Now, my best guess is that's 70, 75 miles. The roads were not real good by our standards today, although we've been on some roads here in Tennessee that look like this, and they're on the map. This might have been the typical road, or we might have seen some of these kinds of roads, paved roads. The Romans certainly did pave roads. Now, they didn't pave them for the benefit of the people that lived there. They paved them for their own benefit. So the question is, why were the Perusium, or the Pharisees, in that particular area? What did they go there for in the first place? Whoops, I got to go back. The Pharisees would have gone up there to evaluate Yeshua's teachings from a halakhic or a Jewish law point of view. Now understand, this is the time of Daniel's prophecy that the Messiah was going to come. They knew it. They were looking for Messiah. It's not that they were, that this guy just suddenly appeared. Oh, well, maybe this is. No, they were really looking for him because they knew what their calendars said. It is not that they were against Yeshua necessarily. This is the attitude the church has, that all the Pharisees are bad and against Yeshua. No, that's not the case. They almost have a right to go and check him out and see if he's qualified. Now, there's things that took place in Mark chapter 7 that, had it been the way the church says it was, he wouldn't be qualified and we wouldn't even be reading this. He would have just been ignored completely forever. When they get there, here's the big issue. Now, it really doesn't tell us all the things that took place up to this point, but in Mark 7, verse 2, and seeing some of his taught ones, some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is, with unwashed hands, they found fault. Key, they found fault. Pretty basically, his disciples did not follow the commandments, the traditions of the elders. There is a very precise way of washing the hands, spiritually or traditionally speaking. Water has to flow in a certain way, and they have to say a prayer, and they got to do this and they got to do that, and it has nothing to do with washing the dirt off. It's everything to do with tradition. It is not a discussion about what his disciples were eating. There isn't even a mention of what they're, well, actually the word used is bread. And that is assumed to mean food. It might just have exactly been bread. They might have sat down and had bread and water. I'm suspecting they sat down and had some kind of lunch, but it doesn't tell us. And nothing to do with food. Here's, I've said this before, so I want to do this. You look at this, you take your mind's eye, and you watch the events that are taking place. One of the reasons I don't like the King James is it doesn't flow in our English, in our language, and it's kind of hard. You stumble across a word that ain't with it. It hasn't caught up to the times, as it were. So you find another version and read this thing. And what you're seeing is Mark 7, 3 through 4. Here's what's happening. The Pharisees and all of the Jews don't eat anything unless they wash their hands in accordance with the tradition of the elders. If they go off to the marketplace or something like that, when they come back, they wash their hands. No matter what they do, they wash their hands. The Assyrians, when they went into the marketplace and came back up and went into their compound, into their community, they did mikvah. They went through, it's like a baptism thing, to wash off the spiritual road dust. They were with them people, those unclean folk. So consequently, they're washing off all that unclean stuff that they picked up in the marketplace. And they might have brushed against somebody that had been unclean. The horror of it all, But understand, the Pharisees' job is to be this level of holiness, this level of set-apartness. That's what they were committed to. They were committed to the Torah. Unfortunately, their traditions took over. And the tradition said, I got to do this thing. I got to wash my hands, and the water's got to run across my wrist, and I got to say the right blessing and shake my head and stuff like that. Failure to do so would produce catastrophic results. And the procedure is exact. So the real issue is, as it says in the text, holding fast the tradition of the elders. Okay. A contemporary reality check. Okay. You're at your church, and you got a visiting pastor, highly acclaimed Christian teacher. And he not only comes with himself, but he comes with this huge entourage of people. And they're all standing around, and everybody is, oh, this guy, his messages are so uplifting and everything. And then you go down to the whatever kitchen or so, and you're going to have lunch. And as soon as the food is served, all of his people just pick up and start eating. Can you see the super self-righteous Christian people in that church looking at them? Their jaws on the floor, their eyes are this big. They're eating without saying the blessing. My goodness. That's what's going on. That's it. Yeshua's guys didn't do it their way. I've been to churches where, boy, you got to do all this, if you don't. So there are, within that church I'm talking about, a bunch of overly religious, self-righteous people that are shocked at that pastor. Well, those Perushim, those Pharisees, are a bunch of overly religious, self-righteous people that are just as shocked that Yeshua's guys were going to have a sandwich without washing their hands. That's what this is about. Don't read anything else into it, because there's nothing there except their traditions took over. Now, as they're looking at him, they're saying, this man can obviously not be the Messiah. He doesn't have his people do these special secret things that we know. The same as the people that watched this guy at church. You know, I'm going to throw my notes away. That guy just didn't know what he was talking. Look at those people eating over there without the blessing. Oh, my. It sounds silly? Well, that's what happened. And here's the worst part. The Pharisees, they don't turn to the disciples. Actually, they shouldn't have anyway. They go to the teacher of the disciples, Yeshua. And the Pharisees and scribes asked him, why do your taught ones not walk according to the traditions of the elders, but eat bread with with unwashed hands? By asking the question and wording it, why does your disciples, they weren't talking about the disciples at all. They were saying, why are you not following our traditions? They looked at him. He is a reflection of his students. The students are a reflection of him, which is a true thing. Why are you not obedient to the traditions of the elders? Now, you ought to know this by now if you've been reading Matthew and you get to Mark and you're on chapter 7 of Mark, that the Pharisees really placed their traditions way over Yahweh's commandments. You should have that in your mind, because that's what it was. The oral commands were above Yahweh's written commands. And they even considered the oral to be not just superior, but as though they were spoken by God himself anyway. And the question obviously reflects this attitude. Here's Yeshua's response. And I love the kind of responses he has. He just goes straight for the meat of the thing. You know, never get into an argument with him. You lose. So he goes straight to him and he said, well, did Isaiah prophesy concerning you hypocrites? As it has been written, I love this part. It is written, this people respect me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain do they worship me, teaching as teachings the commands of men. It is written. No new stuff. He had the opportunity to make, right now, he has the opportunity to make up a bunch of new stuff. He didn't. He went back to the old stuff. And he said, it is written. Why do you also transgress the commands of Elohim because of your tradition? Now, he kind of pulls something else out. Now, he may have been seeing this taking place, because as we read the text, it's like, where'd that come from? You know, his next, what he's talking about, oh, I'm in Matthew here, never mind. He continues, and he's forsaking the command of Elohim, he hold fast to the tradition of men. It's sort of like, where'd that come from? It may have been that he had seen them participating in some of this. There may have been discussion that went on before, but this is important is how he addresses this thing. Forsaking the command of Elohim, he hold fast the tradition of men, and he said to them, well, do you set aside the command of Elohim in order to guard your tradition? It's a serious charge. They came to check him out, and he's just about turned it around and hit them upside the head with it. He's judging them and saying that they hold most dear They love the Torah, you understand? They really do. But they're rejecting it over their own stuff. In Mark 7:10 through 13, Yeshua describes how these men of Yahweh who love the Torah reject the commandment of Yahweh. Here's the deal. Verse 10, Yeshua's quoting out of the Torah, and it says, Moses said, respect your father and your mother, and he who curses father or mother, let him be put to death. How are these Pharisees rejecting the commandment? They do not deliberately dishonor their father and mother to deliberately curse them. They don't, because if they did, then they'd be liable to the command. Here's what Yeshua says. If the Pharisee says to his father or mother, whatever stuff I have is korban, and they're going to use that word korban, and that means offering. It's an offering I have deliberately set to God, to the temple. All my stuff is offered to the temple. They no longer have to take care of their father and their mother when their father and mother get old. And in that culture, they were supposed to take care of father and mother. Instead, they can say, whoa, man, all my money is tied up in the temple. I have offered it as an offering. Religion. Ding, ding, ding. They're getting around the clear command to honor the father and mother by using another command as a loophole. The church does this too. Don't think you're getting out of this. Everybody does. And it's wrong. They are saying that if a person promises his property, his money, as an offering to Yahweh, then that has precedence over any other obligation. These guys make good lawyers, I'm sure of it. So, let me find out where I am in my notes. Okay, Yeshua teaches the people. So he calls the crowd to him. And he says to them, hear me, everyone, and understand. That should really be something, open your ears. There's no matter that enters a man from outside which is able to defile him, but it is what comes out of him that defiles the man. Whenever he says, if anyone has ears to hear, let him hear, perk up your ears. Okay, he's saying, if you eat something, it goes, it doesn't matter about your hands. If you eat some food, it's just going to go out anyway. It's a heart condition. Yeshua knew the heart of those Pharisees, which was to use that loophole. He's still addressing the issue of washing the hands according to the traditions of the elders. He's not doing anything else yet, or ever will. And then where is this? Where am I at here? Okay, so his followers his followers ask him questions, and sometimes I really think that his followers are dumber than a box of rocks, because they should be able to see this stuff. But then on the other hand, they may not really be asking a stupid question. They may want real good clarification of what's going on. because they're caught up and they've listened all their life to this tradition stuff. And they want, what's the real deal? So, Mark 7, verse 18 and 19. And he said, "Are you also without understanding? Do you not perceive that whatever enters a man from outside is unable to defile him, because it does not enter his heart, but his stomach, and is eliminated, thus purging all the foods?" I want you to stop right there. Mark 7:19. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at verse 19, because verse 19 is used to justify the Christian false doctrine that Yeshua just nullified all of the Levitical food laws. This false doctrine shows two things. Now hang on to this one, church. A deliberate false teaching to justify open rebellion or lawlessness. An agenda to throw out the Old Testament, except those parts about tithing, or any other stuff you might like, and replace it with the New Testament. You want to destroy everything that is Jewish and replace it with all that is Christian. Mark chapter 7, verse 19. As it is written in several versions of Scripture and a few of the perversions of Scripture. And this is what people are reading. You're sitting in your church on Sunday and you are reading these versions. The King James, Mark 7:19. "Because it entereth not into his heart, but into the belly, and goes out into the draught," or draft, "purging all meats." I have no idea what a draft is, so I had to look it up. It's toilet. The Scriptures, "because it does not enter his heart, but his stomach, and is eliminated, thus purging all of the foods." The complete Jewish Bible. A lot of Messianics like this guy. This is Dr. David Stern. "For it doesn't go into his heart, but into his stomach, and it passes out into the latrine. Thus he declared all foods ritually clean." Fortunately, he has this in parentheses. The New Revised Standard says this, "Since it enters not the heart but the stomach and goes out into the sewer, thus he declared all foods clean." Now, I'm not sure where that "all foods clean" came from, but it must be there. These guys wouldn't make a mistake. The not inspired version, "For it doesn't go into his heart but into his stomach, and then out of his body. In saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean." The Living, that's debatable, the Living Bible. "For food doesn't come in contact with your heart, but only passes through the digestive system. By saying this, he showed that every kind of food is kosher." The Amplified, "Since it does not reach and enter his heart, but only his digestive tract, and so passes on into the place designated to receive waste. Thus he was making and declaring all foods ceremonially clean, that is, abolishing the ceremonial distinction of the Levitical food, of the Levitical law." That is a genuine quote. The emphasis is in the original. That is what the Amplified says. I used to read the Amplified a lot till I found a lot of this kind of stuff. And last and least, the Message. It doesn't enter your heart, but your stomach, works its way through the intestines and is finally flushed. That took care of dietary quibbling. Jesus was saying that all foods are fit to eat. If you have a Message and you do not have a bird, you have no need for the Message. If you have a bird, you already know why you have a need for the Message. My commentary on Mark chapter 7, verse 19. This is, I believe that, you understand? I'm basing this on what I see. So you don't have to take any of this at all. You don't even have to take notes. I'd advise it, though. Here in verse 19, Yeshua seems to be talking about food. He tells us that food does not enter the heart, but just goes into the belly. And then it goes out into the sewer, goes away. It has no effect on your heart or your heart condition. This statement is reinforcing his discussion in verses 9 through 13, where he's discussing the heart condition. You understand? That's where the traditions take place or precedence over the written law. That's what he's referring to. He's also telling us that eating food with ritually washed or unwashed hands does not affect our heart condition. Now, you got to understand, them people washed their hands before they ate. You know, people do that, okay? Get the dirt off. It's normal. The last part of this verse is the critical part. Purging all meats or purging all foods. The word in the Greek translation for meats is broma, and according to Strong's it says food, articles allowed or forbidden by the Jewish law, meat, victuals. So the word broma can include any unclean meat. It can mean anything that you can put in your mouth and call food. Spiders, rats, snakes, bats, cats, dogs, whatever you want to eat. It can mean those things. However, the Hebrew word for food is ma'akalim, which means, well, the root is okal, which means food as prescribed in Leviticus chapter 11. Food is not anything you can put in your mouth. From the plain text of the King James, we see that Yeshua is saying that the food we eat, with or without clean hands, passes through and has no effect on the heart. That's plain text, King Jimmy. If the reader continues to read 20 through 23, we see that Yeshua is talking about a heart condition and not at all about the Levitical dietary laws. Then why the parenthetical statement added to this verse that alleges that Yeshua declared all foods clean? Where is this coming from? Why did this section, you understand, chapter 7 is referring to this rigid adherence to man's traditions, suddenly change its focus to Levitical food commandments? That's not how things work. You cannot have an instantaneous change of subject in the middle of a sentence. It's not done. I didn't do well in grammar in school, but I know that. So I did some research. I don't remember what IVP stands for. It's a big background, Bible background commentary. It's very common for Bible students to use it. It's real good. It's got a lot of very Christianized stuff in it. Pardon me. We find a deliberate effort to reinterpret Yeshua's words to justify disobedience. Here is what it says, quote, "Writing in a day of conflict between the customs of the Jewish and Gentile Christians, Mark applies this point to the kosher laws of Leviticus 11. Pigs, dogs, bats, owls, and so on are now clean or acceptable to eat." That is exactly the words from it, and it is on page 153. Go look it up. Is that right? Oop. Excuse me. No, that's right. Page 153. 31, 153, Keener. Okay, I got it right down here in my notes. 1, I'm going to take this apart so I can show you how ridiculous this is. Writing in a day of conflict between the customs of Jewish and Gentile Christians? What? 1, there are no Christians at that point in history, Mark chapter 7. 0 Christians in existence. There were no Jewish and Gentile Christians, consequently. Jews and Gentiles did not associate with each other at this time in history and around the Galilee area at all. There was no conflict between them. This is inserted for whatever the nefarious business is that IVP has got. It is wrong. And Mark does not say, well, they say that it changes the Levitical food laws? Excuse me? Just like that, Yeshua breathes a phrase, and now instantly Leviticus chapter 11 ceases to exist. If you believe that, you have a real problem. That's not what happened. I'm going to continue. The problem is a Christian mindset. You are looking for stuff. You are if you're looking for a conspiracy, everything you read has a conspiracy in it. I call this stuff GST, grocery store tabloids. That's where you must be getting it from. There's thousands of conspiracies. Okay? You're looking for biblically based excuses to disobey the law. And that's what you're doing. And you're finding justification for rebellion in everything you look at. This is what you really, really need. The cut and paste Bible. These are available. As soon as we get enough of them in here, we'll be selling them to all of you people. You can cut out the sections that you like and paste them in the Bible, and the sections you don't like, you can cut them out or even wipe them out. You cannot do this. Think about it. Define food. The biblical definition of food to those people right there in the Galilee area in that particular year, which must have been, what, say 31, 32 AD, something like that, depending. Late Second Temple times. Define food. Food, according to what all of them people understood, they knew what it was, and they found it in Leviticus chapter 11. They knew what food was. And here's Leviticus 11, 1 and 2. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aharon, saying to them, speak to the children of Israel, saying, these are the living creatures which you do eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. This is God's food commandments. Moses didn't have a problem with pigs. You understand? This isn't Jewish law. This is God's law to his people, Israel. Now, that ought to give you something right there, because if you're not Israel, you don't have to follow it. Eat whatever you want. If you are Israel, you have to follow it. There's no, well, you don't have to or you do have to. You have to do it. They're Yahweh's, I just said that. In Leviticus 11, Yahweh's giving us clear, plain, accurate, and definitive descriptions of what he considers clean and unclean animals. Leviticus 11:7 says the swine or the pig is unclean. It is clear, precise language. It isn't something that's so vague that someone could say, well, maybe, we could do that. It's really clear. Why did he say that stuff? In Leviticus 11:45, he says, this is Yahweh's words, for I am Yahweh who is bringing you up out of the land of Mitzrayim, that's Egypt, to be your Elohim, and you shall be set apart, for I am set apart. Now, I don't know what it is, but if you eat pig, you are not set apart. That's what he says. If you eat catfish, which is also in there, excuse me, my thingy fell off. If you eat catfish, you're not set apart. If you eat shrimp, oysters, clams, dogs, cats, rats, bats, camels, elephants, you can't eat elephants. You imagine that? You cannot eat any of that stuff because it makes you not set apart, not holy. That's all. He has defined food. That's it. And his definition, I love it because his definition is clear. It says about fish that they have to have fins and scales. Well, right there, that eliminates catfish, which is kind of okay because I really never liked it anyway. They're really not that good. But I can eat bluegills because they have fins and scales. I can't eat shrimp. Oh, that's fine with me. I got sick every time I did. I have said this over and over again. I have to assume that if Yahweh is going to change his mind about something, no matter what it is, he is going to, that he is clearly defined. He is going to give us a clear and detailed explanation of why he's making a change. He made a clear, detailed explanation of what we're not supposed to do. If he's going to change it, he's going to say so. Yes? He never leaves us guessing. He can't do that. Do you understand that? Because sin is disobeying the law. Now, you eat pig, that's sin. I'm sorry. 1 John, 3:4. Go look at that. It's a sin to eat pig. It's a sin to break the Sabbath. He says so. He says so clearly so that we don't sin. Oh, you don't want me to break the Sabbath? Okay. We don't break the Sabbath. You don't want me to eat pig? No problem. I won't. That's it. He has to give us clear laws. There's none of this stuff, well, his laws are hard to keep. Oh, that's baloney. He says they're not. In Deuteronomy 30:11, he says, for the command which I am commanding you today, it is not too hard for you, and it is not far off. Anyone can do it. Listen, I can do it. You can too. Some of you people got PhD kind of degrees, and you're all smart and stuff like that. You can do it. I can. In Deuteronomy 30:14, he says, the word is very near to you, in your mouth, in your heart, to do it. And by the same process, if Yeshua is going to make a change, he is going to make it really clear. Last week's message was on stuff that he talked about. Remember, he says if you, that you shall not, it is written, you shall not commit adultery. Well, he says even if you look at a woman with lusty stuff and stuff like that, you're committing adultery with her. He made a change to an it is written commandment. And he didn't actually change the commandment. He added to it so that we won't, he built a fence around the commandment, protecting us. That's all he was trying to do. The questionable text of verse 19 does not even come close to qualifying as clear, precise, detailed halakha, the law. Therefore, I have to conclude this. Not a single Jewish person standing there that particular day understood that Jesus had changed Levitical dietary laws. No one got that impression. I have a question. Why is eating pig meat so important to you Christians? What's your thing with bacon? What's wrong with you? Why do you have to do that? Might it have something to do with Isaiah 66:17? I did a message on this several years back. It's 2 hours long. Go find it or write me and I'll tell you. Might there be prophecy? Now I'm going to tell you that the desire, the absolute, whatever thing is wrong in a man's mind that about pig ruined the person we know. He was supposed to be a pastor having a great deal to do with messianic ministry. He was called by Yahweh to have a messianic ministry, to set it up. It didn't mean he had to do it. It meant he had to set it up. And I came in and asked him, hey, how do I do this stuff? And he says, what? I was told I'm supposed to do this. Who are you? So we talked. We got together. We worked this thing out. We started working together. And that Sunday he officially, or was it Saturday? It was Sunday. That Sunday that he's telling his church what we're doing, and we got this great messianic ministry going. And he stood there and said, but I will not give up my bacon. And his spitting in God's face destroyed him. Over bacon? It's not even good for you. What is your problem with pork? Why? Conclusions. The topic of Mark 7, 1 through 23 is placing man's traditions over and above Yahweh's commandments. That's it. Notice that Yeshua is saying that there isn't anything really wrong with man's traditions, even if they seem to be overly legalistic. You understand? He didn't say to those guys, you shouldn't be doing that. Nothing like that. He didn't say that it was bad. But when the traditions replace or override Yahweh's commandments, we need to reevaluate that tradition and bring it in line with Yahweh's words. That's all he's talking about. If you want to wash your hands like that, please do. You should, maybe. Yeshua did not. This is a conclusion. He didn't change the Levitical dietary commandments. So when the pastor says, you're a little bit arguing, he says, well, we're going to just agree to disagree. That's another way of saying, shut up, I'm right, you're wrong. It's not that. This is what the book says. If you don't want to go along with it, just say so. Shalom.